Okay, amazing. It's 5:30. So we're going to keep letting people in, but we'll start so that we can be timely and respect everyone's time. I'm going to spotlight our executive director, or I'm going to spotlight Dawn Valadez to get us started. Thanks everyone for coming.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dawn Valadez. I'm going to be your facilitator, moderator tonight. But what we wanted to first start with is an acknowledgement that we are on First Nations occupied territory, and that our Ohlone, Chinoyo, Karkin, Muwekma, and Miwok, and I apologize for my mispronunciation, and many other people who have not been named are here. And this is occupied land. And that Oakland, I'm in Oakland, so I'm acknowledging the land of the people that I am on right now. And if you are somewhere, wherever you are, to acknowledge the land that you are on. This is stolen and occupied land. And if you don't know whose land you are on, we encourage you to educate yourself about that. And I also just want to acknowledge that Oakland has a vibrant intertribal community. We had one of the first intertribal houses and places of community. People were pushed and pulled from all over the country and came here to Oakland. And we have a vibrant, amazing, incredible community of Indigenous people. And there are many of us also who, the border, we didn't cross the border crossed us, and we are Indigenous people from all of the Americas who have landed here in the Bay Area. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge all of the people and all of my relatives and all of my ancestors who are here, both in body and in spirit. And for us to take a moment to just respect that where we are at, and that we are in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, with all of our people of color and our queer communities and our trans communities who are fighting for justice right now and have been for a very long time. So we appreciate that, and we want to honor that and start our session with that. And I also want to just make a quick acknowledgement that there are some Indigenous communities around our country who are suffering deeply from this pandemic, from COVID. And in particular, we know that the Dene, the Navajo, and the Hopi people are suffering. And so I'll put some things in the chat about where, if you have the time to support and help, either monetarily or with, prayers, as well as any other kinds of support. And we acknowledge the four directions and the center and the multiverse in whatever way that you all believe and pray. So thank you for giving us a moment to acknowledge that.
Thank you so much, Dawn. My name is Paula. Hi, everybody. I'm the executive director at BAVC. I use she, her pronouns. I just want to acknowledge, first of all, how amazing it is to see all of your faces here. And I know that most of us come from the Bay Area, and we all do lots of different things during the daytime. Some of us are filmmakers in our day jobs, and some of us do it, we're the midnight warriors. And it all is great. And I just want to say that BAVC, our roots, our name is the Bay Area Video Coalition officially. We're going to be going through a name change soon. But the acronym BAVC is really special and important to us because our roots, we're very much an activist organization, as you can probably tell if you're new to BAVC. But we are all about connecting individual media makers and communities to tools, to platforms, and to peer networking so that we can learn from each other, we can build our tools, and we can become the most powerful storytellers that we can, and we can apply that to whatever form makes the most sense for us, whether that be a web series on YouTube that is telling your own personal family story, or something that is maybe has a lot more layers and complexity, where you need to build a very professional crew and a very intentionally, formatted script that you want to start pitching to different studios. There's room for all of that, and we want to support that. And that's how we think about when we build our staff team and how we recruit. That's really kind of the perspective that we take. I'm so excited about the panel that we have for you today. Dawn is going to introduce folks, or actually they're going to introduce themselves and their projects. But we're just super excited and actually really inspired by the work that they have been creating. And I think for us, BAVC has really been kind of steeped in documentary filmmaking. And for us, some of the most exciting work and makers that we see in the Bay Area are really in the narrative space, or narrative and doc, but in the episodic space, because of the room for creative expression and the room for storytelling and incorporating, I think, a lot of diversity in the crews and the storytelling itself. And so we're really excited to be diving into that more. We just wrapped on a writing program called Serial Storytellers. And I just saw Tatiana, who is one of the actresses that got to be in our table read last weekend. Is anyone else from Serial Storytellers here? Maybe you can just raise your hand or just say hi in the chat. But it was an incredible 9-week-long writing program that was co-facilitated by Dawn. Jay, who is also here on the webinar, she was one of the writers as well, and also helped as an assistant teacher. And it was, oh, hey, there's Malachi. Okay, Malachi's here too. It was a really beautiful experience, and we're so excited that we did it, and we hope to build on that. And we had an incredible instructor, Yvette Vargas. Up and coming in the next few weeks, we have another segment of that program, which is on episodic producing, and that's going to be happening. It's a 3-part series that we're going to be doing on July 1st, the 8th, and the 15th. Those are going to be 2-hour-long sessions, so please check that out if you're interested. It's going to do a lot of nuts and bolts around what producing is and how you do those really nitty-gritty things, like thinking about your story as it relates to budget, as it relates to crew, and scheduling your production and all those things that you wish somebody really walked you through before you started thinking about your episodic project. So I hope you can catch that. And then lastly, we're going to do a whole lot more community events and engagement and talks. And we want to just have a lot more platforms for people to learn and share and make connections. So thank you so much. I'm really thrilled you're here, and I'm going to pass it to Isa. And thank you, Isa, for producing this. She's been amazing. And also Brittany, who has also been her co-producer. So thank you so much to you too.
Yeah, it's been an honor to co-produce this event. Shout out to Brittany and everyone at BAVC. I'm going to be really quick because I want to get to the panel. Just a quick house rules. We're going to keep everyone on mute because the turnout's great. I really wish this were in real life so I could be seeing all of your radiant, beautiful faces at once, but it's Zoom. And I think one of the things that we're really passionate about is not postponing these, because COVID's created necessary isolation. We're doing it in solidarity for each other's safety, and it's really difficult right now to be apart. So we want to create spaces like this where we can stay connected. Also, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Brittany will be moderating the questions and clustering them for the very end, when Dawn and I will help field your questions for the panelists, and that will be, again, at the end. And then it's great that so many of us are on video. If we start to have connectivity issues, we ask that some of you go off video, because sometimes if all of us are on video, which is my preference, but alas, technology, maybe you could just self-regulate that and turn it off. And lastly, we just ask for some patience and grace if technological issues arise, but we just want you to have the best experience. So I'm gonna pass it back to Dawn, and we're gonna get this thing rolling. So yeah, use the chat function to interact. And yeah, back to you, Dawn.
Right. Thank you so much, Isa and Brittany, for coordinating all of this, and everybody at BAVC for doing that. And thank you for Paula for opening us up and welcoming us. I'm super excited. I'll tell you just a quick 2 minutes about myself. There's some things in the chat you can check out. I'm a reluctant filmmaker and have been a social worker and activist for most of my life. And got into filmmaking and am a documentary filmmaker. And I am a queer Chicana mother, person who loves our people, all of our people doing this healing work. And storytelling is magic, and it is the magic and often the healing work that we absolutely need. So this is really exciting for me to be part of this. I recently received an award from the Gina Davis Institute on Media and Gender to develop some work. And so I'm actually working on my first series myself, scripted series. So I'm learning here. I am a student listening to these incredible people that we have on this panel. So the people, and I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, but I'm going to let you know who's here. So we have Morgan Mathews and Jean Finley, who have started this incredible project called BIT, which is about the African-American experience in Silicon Valley as Black entrepreneurs. And it, in some ways, has been a little bit of a mystery to me. So I got a chance to see a little clip. I'm super excited to find out more about that. And I'm already completely blown away by them and their website. So that we're posting some of their things in there. We have Reyna Amaya, who's one of the actors in the North Pole, and Josh Healey, who's one of the producers, directors, coordinating, people created that. I have binge watched the North Pole. I have shared this with everybody I know. I live in Oakland, been in Oakland. This is, seriously, you want to know a little bit about Oakland and about whose land we're on and the people who are here? North Pole. Super excited to see that. And then my friend Florencia Manovil, who is an incredible filmmaker, incredible writer, just a big, giant thinker and great human, who did a series called Dyke Central, which you got to see a clip on your own. And we're going to have her talk a little bit about what Dyke Central was. It's, oh my God, I have so many crushes on so many people in that show. I just have to admit that. Just because I'm an elder doesn't mean that I'm blind and can't, or even if I was blind, I would still be able to know how beautiful these people are in this show. So I'm super excited to let them introduce themselves. And I think that's the order that we're going to go in, and we're posting their links to that. So I think Morgan and Jean, if you could tell us a little bit about, you've got about 3 minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself and about BIT, and then from there we'll go to Reyna and Josh, and Florencia will finish that, and then I've got questions for you.
Sounds good. And I think Issa, at some point we were gonna share the trailer. I don't know if that was before or after, but
Yeah, whenever.
Okay, cool. So I'll be brief. My name is Morgan Mathews, Oakland-based filmmaker. Moved out here to California 3 years ago with my wife. I don't have a formal film background by any nature. I work in tech, actually, and as I'm sure we'll get more into, that's the source of our story, BIT. So BIT is a half-hour made-for-TV dramedy about the underbelly of Silicon Valley, told through the lens of people of color. And we, worked on this out of the kind of desire to, share more of our nuanced experience. For those that don't know, the makeup of employees in Silicon Valley is like 1.5% of the employees are Black. And so when you're in a big office space at a tech company, that has an impact on you. And for us, we chose to use that impact to our, to almost in a therapeutic and artistic way. And that's how the story came about. And I could share a lot more, but I'll pass it over to Jean, who was the executive producer on the project. I was the co-writer and director. Jean was the EP, but I'll let him share about himself and a little bit more about the story.
Cool, thanks, man. Humbled to be here. Thanks. It is awesome to see all these beautiful faces. So I love the energy. Thank you, Dawn and Isa. So my name is Gene. I'm from Chicago. Moved here to the Bay Area about 5 years ago. I'm a creator at heart. Music is my first passion. That was my first way of storytelling, writing music, creating music, producing music, and kind of self-taught in a lot of different things. Moving to the Bay Area, when I moved here, my wife and I lived here twice. We got here, we didn't like it, we moved back to Chicago, and then the weather drove us back out here after about 9 months. Now we really appreciate it. But there was two things that we couldn't find. One, I mean, based on where we were living, we couldn't find a community. And when we came back out here, I started a job at a pretty big tech company. So I was kind of blown away by the fact that there was not very much representation from anyone that wasn't a white male. Walking through there, that was slightly frustrating. And you start to hear these stories of like these experiences, and I was trying to figure out like why they weren't represented. And then I tried to connect the dots back to a conversation I had with my nephew around how he was inspired to go in to be a dentist. Lo and behold, he'd watched reruns of a television show that I grew up on YouTube. And so fast forward to starting my job at LinkedIn, and like that experience, like I had this dream and was inspired to kind of create this show. So that's how we got to BIT. I'm excited to be here. It's near and dear to my heart. We're really excited about the really cool stuff and doors that is open for us, and looking forward to creating new stuff.
Yeah, and lastly, I think we're about to show a 1-minute trailer that we recently created for BIT. It's not publicly available, so this feels like very exclusive. So happy to share it with y'all that are here, and enjoy.
Can we show some love to BIT and Jean and Morgan?
Thank you.
And then I'm gonna pass it to Reyna.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Thank you so much for having me here. This is great. I feel like I'm in, community, like-minded folks. Yeah, I am one of the writers for the North Pole. I'm also one of the actors who was in the North Pole. I played Nina in the series. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. I, also am a voiceover artist and artist activist. And I've got my my co-pilot here, Josh, is also, I know, on the call here with me. So again, thank you guys so much for having me. It's great.
I guess that's me. What's up, y'all? My name's Josh Healey. I'm playing, tag team with Reyna today. It was good. First of all, it was good to see that. Shout out to BIT. I'm excited to check that series. And I recognize some of the actors from it. When you're casting in the Bay Area, there's a limited number of film actors to work with. And so I was like, oh, we worked with them in that thing. Oh, we were. So it's good to see. I'm excited to see the full series. So the North Pole is a web series that we made here in Oakland. I'm one of the co-writers and producers. We've done 2 seasons. We don't have our trailer with us, but looks like someone put the website, and I can put the trailer in the comments and you all can check it out. But we've done 2 full seasons of 7 episodes each. The basic tagline for the North Pole, we say this is a comedy about the big issues of our generation, gentrification, global warming, and gluten-free donuts. All equally important, serious, hard-hitting issues. And the first season really hit. There's 4 friends that are following it based in North Oakland. That's the nickname for the North Pole, for those who don't know. And then the second season, we kind of pivoted a little bit towards talking more about immigration. And one of the main characters is undocumented, and that becomes more of the storyline. So we try and balance the social realities with the humor and the story. And we can tell you more about the lessons we've learned making a web series, the ups, the downs, all the things that go into it, because it's a beautiful, it's a labor of love, with a lot of labor and a lot of love. And right now, I think there's this question of like, I've just been thinking about, essential work and what is our role as artists. What stories are essential? What stories need to be told? And how do you make media right now? And I think it's just like whatever we make is gotta hit, otherwise it's just not worth making. So I'm excited to be here with folks who are making real shit. Pass.
Yeah, Florencia, tell us about yourself.
Hi, my name is Florencia. I am an Oakland-based writer-director. I've been here for 17 years. Originally, I'm from Argentina. I prefer to be behind the camera and not in front of it, so apologies for the many ums. And yeah, Dyke Central was made just before web series became a thing. So we were really kind of guinea pigs in that whole world. And there were a lot of growing pains in the making of it because of it. I think it would be very different making it now, but hopefully a lot of the lessons learned along the way can be useful to you. And yeah, I would say, we shot the pilot in 2011, and then I shot like 4 more episodes in 2013, and then finished out the season with 5 more episodes in 2014, and then released the full thing online in 2015. So it's a few years old. I took a break from Episodic to give some of my attention to other projects that I wanted to, because Episodic really will like suck you for long extended time periods. For me, it was, as you heard, like 5 years, and it just takes a lot out of you. But the great thing is doing it a little, you can do a little bit at a time. What else? I'm also a single parent. I've been working on a trilogy of shorts that Dawn is associate producer of. That's my most recent work. Maybe it'll come up later. And yeah, hello everyone. I'm really happy that it's summer. I don't know about you, but that is putting me in a good mood right now.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your introductions. That was beautiful. And to kind of jump off of what Josh was talking about, and I apologize, Reyna, that I didn't realize that you were one of the writers. I just kind of have a, media crush on you and was like, Nina. But, that's awesome that it's a great series. I think I'd like to start with Florencia for you to, and this is a question for all of you, for all the panelists, like, really why, and if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my phone, looking at the questions that we kind of came up with. So I apologize if that looks weird, but that's what I'm doing. Seriously, like, why Dyke Central? And why you? And why did you do Episodic? I love that you talk about, I like Josh is saying, like, these are essential stories. And really the 3 projects that we have represented here, I consider essential stories. And so why this story? Why Episodic? Why you? And then if everybody will go kind of in reverse order to answer that question.
When I decided to make Dyke Central, I had just finished my first and only feature. It really took everything out of me, and I was working on another script for a feature, and like I said, series were not really a thing that people were doing independently at that time, but the prospect of fundraising for a feature was huge. And at that time, a friend came into some money and wanted to donate $5,000 towards my next project. And I knew that that would be a drop in the bucket for a feature, but that I could shoot the pilot episode for the series that I had been very loosely developing. Kind of like, I wasn't even thinking about doing it because I was still burnt out, but the reason I was developing it is because my friends, queer community, were just constantly complaining about how we didn't have anything. There was nothing, and people, I was the only filmmaker that they knew, Also, I think there were less queer filmmakers in the Bay at the time, and queer community in the Bay is so special. I mean, compared to anywhere else, especially at that time. So it was something that we felt was special, wanted to be represented. And I just acknowledged that there was a void that I could fill. Almost, it was my responsibility to fill it. And then when I felt that I could have some support and it wouldn't be just myself, I just decided to go for it. And when I got these $5,000, I was like, okay, let's shoot. You know, it had been, I think 3 years since I had shot my feature, and I was really ready to shoot something new. So I shot the pilot. I had no idea. I wasn't even thinking of doing the whole thing, but then the reception for the pilot was so big, and we ended up, a nonprofit, the Brown Boy Project got involved. They wanted to host like a big premiere at the Grand Lake Theater, and then like 500 people came to that, and we're just super excited. So yeah, just the constant affirmation from the Dyke Central fans is what made the series keep going, what made me be like, okay, it's worth it. And then the way that the community even showed up for the shoot itself, like we'd be like, hey, we need a house, and you know, random amazing queer people were like, oh, come shoot in our house, like take over our house for 3 days. So that's really what made the series happen. Otherwise, it was just too overwhelming. I can't remember if that was the full question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I don't know, Josh and Reyna, if you want to jump in here, you know, how, you know, I love that you started with that, like essential, and I think Florencia talked about essential both for her as an artist as well as, you know, the gap for these stories. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you about that. Why this story? Why you? Why Episodic?
Well, I would say for me on a personal level, I'm originally from San Francisco.
Here, we'll switch that. We got you.
People of color and folks started getting pushed out. Okay. So, and ever since that, again, I've spent my middle school, my high school in Oakland. I think that at this point, again, people from Oakland, in this case, in our series, people from North Oakland, polar bears, are becoming harder and harder to find in their native habitat. Their iceberg is melting around them. And so for me personally, I think that it was really important to tell this story about home. As we like to say, yes, this you know, the North Pole takes place in North Oakland. It takes place as a Bay Area story, but it is a story of home. And all of us can relate to a story of home and losing home. So that's why I had to get involved when I even first heard about even auditioning for the project and for season 1. And then for season 2, being able to be involved on a writer's tip. Well, now we have another level of why I needed to get involved. I needed to get involved as a woman. I needed to get involved as a person of color. I needed to get involved as a native. I needed to get involved as an activist to tell this story that is not an Oakland specific story. It is a global story about trying to maintain home and maintain community.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm always following up Reyna. That's the wrong way to do this. But I'll try to add a little bit. I guess why this story and why us. I mean, the North Pole is and any of the filmmakers can tell you this, it's a team effort, especially when you're self-producing. It is a whole team. And so we had a writer's room, we had a nonprofit, similar to Dyke Central, which I think is very unique to the Bay Area. Like, this is a different type of ecosystem than LA or New York. So for us, Movement Generation, which is a social and environmental justice nonprofit and has never done any media. And I was the one person arts and culture staff. And like, basically my job was like, how do we take these big political issues and make them more creative and interesting and engaging? And after doing some one-off short videos, one of my collaborators, our director, Ivani Turiaga, Darren Colston, our producer, they were like, we need to go beyond short, what we call comedic propaganda videos, and really have a narrative and have a series. And so I think it's that Bay Area ethic of like, fuck it, we're not going to wait for Hollywood, we're going to just make it ourselves. And there's also, for me, and I'm looking at Issa in the corner coming out of You Speaks, like this spoken word, like democratize art, take the mic, like just don't wait for anyone. You just got to do it. But then there's the ethics, and we can get into it, is like we're a multiracial team making a multiracial show with various dynamics about that we had to build our trust, have our team, and be accountable to different communities in different ways. And so for us, I think the web series was the form that we were able to do it, and we learned lessons from season 1. And then season 2, I think we made a stronger product, but we also learned, and this is a different thing, but distribution of web series, it's hard. It's really hard. And so we learned some lessons, but then as the media landscape is changing, you got to really keep up. So we'll talk about that, but to me, a web series, it's a great way to kind of get in and be able to have control, not just individually, but as like with Dyke Central, it's like community accountability, because that's who you're relying on to make the shit in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing this, and I totally agree that Bay Area is a unique environment, and so I'd love to hear from Morgan and Jean talk a little bit about you guys who can't come here and jumped into this Silicon Valley. Why this story? Why you? What happened?
Yeah, for sure. So many reasons. I mean, like you all saw in the trailer, that clip where the woman in the elevator asks or says, "Oh, you're talking about the other black guy in the building." Like that stuff literally happened, in the office place. And I think when you're in those spaces, you have to make a choice of how you're going to react, how you're going to respond. You have to be thoughtful about that. And with so much of that energy built up on a week-to-week basis, we're just like, you know what, forget it. We just need to get this out in a way that's going to reach more people than the people we work with, right? And to your point around why, your question around why episodic, to me, the intent of episodic is a storyline that has legs, right? So you want to be able to build a universe and a world that, if not for 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, all our favorite shows, right, are like 4 to 5 seasons. And it's because no matter what the subject matter is, they've created enough of a universe and a world for people to engage with. And we felt like the world of BIT, and even the title of BIT, so the definition of BIT is a small piece of something bigger. So no matter if you're a black person in tech, at some point in your life, you've probably been a small piece of something bigger. And, we felt that we had the authentic point of view to tell that story, because like the core of our team, outside of like some of the production crew, the core of our team works in Silicon Valley. I literally met Jean in my office, my co-writer, we met at the office, and we literally get off work from 9 to 5 and like go and find like an office room to whiteboard and outline our show. So yeah, ultimately this story is just like, really important. And I think because we tell it in like this dark comedic lens, it's not preachy and it's not, falling on deaf ears. It's digestible. So that was, kind of some reasons, but I'll let Jean, say anything else.
Yeah, I don't have much, Morgan. I think you covered it. I think the one thing I didn't mention is I think it was Florencia says she was a mother. I'm a new father. So when I think about like my responsibility as a new father, I have a little boy, I have a black boy. He's 5.5 months old. And what I want to make sure that I do is leave him stories to inspire and not hide who I am and who our people are and who our allies are. And I feel like stories are the best way to do that. And if you can do it so that everybody wants to be involved, that's how you build like solidarity and community. So I kind of feel like it's a great way to do that. And so For me specifically, at least right now, the idea was to build something so that he could be inspired, and then other folks could be inspired.
Thank you. That's great. And this next question, you've already started sort of talking about it, but it's, I love, well, two things. One is that all of you are incredibly independent, and so that's really an important piece of this. And why, and maybe this sounds rhetorical based on what you've already just said, but like, why does it matter that we have representation and that you have these, really diverse teams that are representing all of these different sort of voices, and what are, and I think Josh sort of started to talk a little bit about this, but like, what are the challenges of that, and what are, how do we use that representation in media in a way for social change? Because I see all of your projects as being part of wanting to use this medium in order to do that. So why does it matter, this representation, and what are some of the challenges that you face doing that? And I don't know if Josh, if you want to start with that, because I think you started having that a little bit when you were just talking.
Yeah. The white guy can talk about representation. I like to joke around a little bit. Sometimes sarcasm gets lost over Zoom, so stick with me a little bit. I think about, me and Issa were talking about this the other day, that I'm originally from Washington, D.C. My partner's from the Bay, and that's what brought me out here. I've been here, I think 13 years, like a bar mitzvah number of years, a lot of years. And I worked for most of my time. I didn't come from the film world. I came from spoken word and youth organizing. And so most of my professional life was mostly with where most people were people of color, and most of my bosses were women of color, and most of the artists I worked with. And then I got into the film world, and I was like, holy shit, this is what everybody's complaining about. It's just white dudes everywhere. And I was like, why am I joining this? They don't need more people like me. But the thing is, the North Pole is a whole crew. And so like our team, Ivani Turiaga lives, on 52nd and Market, is Chilean. Darren Colston, West Oakland, like third generation black man from West Oakland. Reyna, Dante Clark from Richmond. Like, I think what we decided is making this show, you have to, there's this question of authenticity that can mean 10 different things to 10 different people. I think we thought about what is the story that needs to be told, and then also what are the stories that we as a team are able to make, because there is no one Oakland story. Every story about Oakland right now, gentrification is part of every movie, it's just the context. So to try and make the one story would feel impossible. So for us, what are the stories that we are able to tell, and who are the people that we need to hold ourselves accountable to? So for us having this nonprofit, Movement Generation, they were kind of like our political advisory board and social advisory board, to kind of be like, here are some of the stories that we think are missing. And then our creative team would be like, all right, well, this is how we think we can tell this story in a fun way, and this is our idea of doing it. And then in the writer's room, we just debate. We check each other. Reyna tell me to shut the fuck up, and we keep it moving. And that's kind of I'll leave it at that. What do you think, Reyna? Am I misrepresenting the representation debate in the North Pole?
No, I think that's that's spot on. I think that's it. I think that, again, as we know, there is a piece of responsibility in storytelling. As queer community, as people of color, as women, the list goes on. There's responsibility to make these things authentic and real and do it justice. Do the justice. And so I think that no matter what piece it is that you're creating, it should involve some level of collaboration, because I am only my experience. And my experience is valid. But when you're dealing with a project, you need my experience, you need Josh's experience, you need these other folks' experiences in order to really enrich the project and write what you know. That's really our argument about all of this Hollywood stuff, is we don't like white men writing our story. So if you're gonna write your story, do it justice.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I I've been involved in so many conversations about this, like who's telling whose story and how do we do that in a way. And media making is collaborative, and I love, Jean, what you said about, like, you have a son and you want stories so that he, that he sees himself. And I feel like BIT, even though I haven't seen your project yet, I'm super excited. Just that clip was like really exciting. I mean, it's sort of a meta thing that you guys are doing, right? It's like you're telling the story of representation in Silicon Valley, but you're also telling the story as episodic. It's like meta. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, like in terms of, both you and Morgan, but like what representation means and what are the challenges for that, and, and the possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, so I got educated. So film is not my background, and I'll continue to say that I'm constantly learning. But I spent some time and educated myself on like the film system and just like how this whole thing like came together. And it was like really interesting to read about that because, to Josh's point, it was like just a whole bunch of white men. They essentially fixed and rigged the system so that they would be successful. And so if you think through like how systems get created, i.e. racism and like all the other things that we're constantly fighting, you have to ask yourself, like, how do you tear that down? And so as we built BIT, we realized that, like Morgan said, it was therapeutic. It was a way to bring a voice, amplify voices that aren't heard. It was a way to have on the nose conversations. Like there are so many people that are just afraid to talk about things, especially when they're uncomfortable. So like, how do you do that? You write a show like North Pole, you write a show like BIT, so people can be energized by it. I mean, it's no wonder why so many people are still consuming content. Like, right, content hasn't gone away. So like, how do we do that? It changes people's minds, it changes people's hearts. And so like anecdotally, we were pitching, and we're in this like really cool place. Essentially we're at Netflix, we're pitching at Netflix. And one of the senior leaders at Netflix just stuck with me. He was like, our whole philosophy around delivering content is that we believe that it's the Trojan horse to like social change. And like that stuck with me. Like since we've had that conversation, because like as we are building out Chocolate Chip Media and writing new stories, like that's my responsibility. Like as a storyteller, as a creator, my job is to have that insightful moment that someone goes like, huh, is that real? I mean, like we wrote a story, Morgan and Nelson wrote a story where when we've shown it, like we've been asked, like, did all those things happen? Like every single thing that's in this show has happened. Like we didn't embellish anything at all. And it's the kind of like the taken backness that it creates, which is what's authentic, which is what creates conversation, which is the reason why we wrote it, was to do that. So, I mean, that's a pretty long roundabout undesigned answer to like, I mean, the idea was to build a story and drive social change. And as like creators, we feel responsible to do that.
Yeah, well, I'll just follow up briefly. So I think for me, why representation matters in general, one of my favorite quotes is real short. It's words make people. And what that means is anything you say, anything you read, anything you say and read or consume is forming who you are, right? From the time you're born to the time you're an adult to the time you leave this earth. So words make people. And if you're not seeing words that are, if you're always seeing words that are reflective of one point of view, then what type of people, what type of person is that creating? What type of society is that creating? So if there's a lack of representation, that means there's a lack of identity. There's a lack of knowing. And so I think at scale, we wanted to contribute to, I don't know if you want to say the pipeline or whatever, but we want to contribute to this momentum of, you know, underrepresented storytellers getting their voices out more. And I don't know how many people have been down this path of like making films, but like Josh and Reyna and Florencia, like it's extremely hard, especially when you don't come with a silver spoon in your mouth, when you don't come from money, when you don't come from a prestigious film school or a prestigious network. Like shit is really, really, it's like you're building a business for like a sprint, but it's you have to create a pitch. You have to, you know, network to people. You got to raise money. You got to build a team. You have to eventually distribute and market. All those things are synonymous with building a business. But for a film, you're doing it for like 6 to 12 months and sometimes longer. We started BIT in 2018 and we just started showing it kind of beginning of this year, and we're pitching right now. So that's a 2-year journey. Yeah, so, and then when connecting back to the story, to ensure that representation was felt, we interviewed Black and brown women and men in the tech industry who were entrepreneurs, who were tech employees, and we just kind of just sat down with them and got an understanding of what it's been like to build their businesses, right? And we wanted to put that feeling in the story. And then, yeah, lastly, when it comes to representation, I think intention is very important. Like Reyna was saying, I think that, you know, everybody's going to bring something different to the table. But before you even bring people to the table, it's asking yourself, you know, what are my intentions, right? Getting really clear on what type of energy I want to surround myself with, but also let it be reflective of the story I'm telling the people around me. So I know I got a little passionate there, but yeah, that's all I'll say.
No, that's great. I love it. I you know, I don't think we can do this work without being passionate, because like you said, you know, for those of us who don't have the financial background or the film background or whatever those things are handed to us, it's like, this is hard work. And it, you know, you're on a short timeline. I mean, for documentary filmmakers, the average time is about 6 years to make a film. So I'd love to hear from Florencia talk a little bit about representation, and then maybe you could move us into our next question, which will hopefully be connected, is like, how did you get your crew together? Like, how did you cast? How did you do that? So I know you can talk a little bit about representation, and in some ways, Dyke Central was like the opposite of the L word. Kind of, it represented the like real world of queer people in the Bay Area, which is what was so amazing about it. But tell us a little bit about that, and then tell us about your you know, casting and crew, and I'll let everybody else talk about that after you.
Yeah, that's great. It is definitely all connected for me. That was the thing, right? The L word was the only thing that was out there, and to be fair, the L word does represent a part of Los Angeles lesbians, but it's very different from here. I thought it was, you know, it does not at all reflect our world here. In terms of representation, I mean, the whole motivation was to represent our community. So all of the characters are based on people I know, people that are me and my friends. But yeah, the casting and crew process is really tied into that, because what really made Dyke Central is that the cast in great part came from the community. And I think this is something that comes up a lot with queer content is, well, are you having queer people and trans people representing those, like acting, embodying those characters? And something that's kind of tied into that is, especially here in the Bay, is we don't have the broadest pool of screen actors, right? So already the pool is pretty limited. And if you are looking for characters that are gender expansive, that don't fit like traditional masculine and feminine, like male masculine, female feminine gender expression, then that actors generally have to conform in their gender expression professionally. So we really had to like really scratch the surface of the pool available, and we reached out to the community, and thus like there's 8 main characters. I think half of them are were at the time or 5 of the 8, I would say, were non-trained or like not professionally acting at that time. And, you know, that came with its own challenges, but it's also it was really exciting, you know, and a lot of them to this day get stopped at the like farmer's market or, you know, at Ismendi or wherever. They're like, oh my God, I know you. And a couple of them have gone on to pursue acting careers, which is super exciting. And in terms of the crew, it's the same. I think for me, just advertising, being very vocal about what you're doing, and you know, encouraging people, this is like queer, trans, person of color centered project, like just in the descriptions of the characters, like describing like their ethnicity, gender expression, and whatnot. That also attracted like a very primarily queer crew, or people who are just very supportive. And that was really important to me. I did go to film school and was so grossed out by like the macho environment that I was like, I'm not interested in working in the industry because this is like a toxic environment and I don't want to lead my life that way. So that's when I was like, I'm only going to work on my own indie projects, and I do other work on I'm a translator, and that's like my other work. And I was like, I'm only ever gonna work on sets that are female dominated, and yeah, and there's no like big ego, you know, thing. And that's the kind of sets that I intentionally create. So what there are definitely cis guys on our sets, but they're the kind of cis guys that are completely comfortable with like a woman director producer, and who are completely comfortable with a majority, you know, mixed gender queer cast and crew. So I don't know if that answers both of those questions, but I think it's in the how you also announce yourself, attracting the right people to the project.
Oh, that's great. I love it. And, you know, I'm so excited every time I get to see any of the people who are in your show, because they are like, many of them are Bay Area, like gamous or famous, and super fun to hang out with and stuff. So yeah, I don't know, Morgan, if you want to talk a little bit about, you know, your crew and how you know, how did you figure that out, and how did you get people together to work on either casting and the production side? It looks like you've got some great executive producers and other producers involved as well.
Yeah, Gene's all right as an executive producer. He's okay. No, I'm joking. Yeah, it was man, it was all brand spanking new. Like Gene and I aren't from the Bay Area. I know a lot of filmmakers aren't, but like for us, we literally just came from the tech space, and Gene came to me at lunch one day. It was like, yo, man, I got a TV show idea. I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with that information? Like, you got a TV show idea. And we're just both, we both grew up as athletes. And I think there's just like a certain type of DNA we have in us. Is like when we say we're going to do something, like we really just want to do it. I know a lot of people that aren't athletes have that DNA, but it's something that we tapped into. And so once we decided we were going to make this show, we put on our tech hats and was like, all right, how do you build something from the ground up as fast as possible and in a smart way? And given that we didn't have any creative, when I say any, I mean like not one creative connection in the Bay Area, we started with going on a Facebook group. I wish I could remember right now which Facebook group it was. I like raised my hand, I was like, hey, I'm Morgan. I got this idea for a TV show. Can I see all the DPs in here? And they're probably like, who is this guy? Like, he doesn't have a reel. He doesn't have any information other than like, I'm making a TV show. But oddly enough, 20 DPs got back to me with their reels. I was like, oh, this is like pretty cool. And out of all the DPs, we chose Evan Weidenkeller. He's an amazing cinematographer. Definitely check out his work if you get a chance to. So Evan was actually our first hire on the crew. And we kind of did things in reverse, but because typically people hire a producer first. But my train of thought was that as a director, the DP or the cinematographer is my right-hand man or woman, and I want the most collaborative process with them because they're gonna help me like create what's in my head and put it on screen. So got Evan on board, then got our producer Richard Valencia on board. And then from there, it was like this domino effect. They both knew a number of creatives in the Bay Area. Luckily, our story landed enough for people to say that they wanted to work on it and give us favors. As I'm sure all the other filmmakers on here can relate to. You got to ask for favors because your budget is not what it is in real life. And from there, the next was the ensemble, building out the cast. So if you could tell in the pilot, we have a lot of characters. I think it's a 17 character ensemble. That's a lot for a half hour. But it was, we felt it was right for the story. For our 3 leads, we actually worked with SAG because to what everybody's point was, the pool in the Bay Area, talented people, but from a volume perspective, it's not as much as certain other markets like LA. So our three leads are Beta LA kind of transplants. And then the rest of our ensemble went on like backstage and SF casting. And yeah, that was really the process. And, I wish all my crew was here and cast because like we have to thank them like exponentially because without them, like it's just couldn't have got it made at all. And so super talented people that we got to work with. Jen, you want to add anything? Cool.
Was that a pass, Gene? Or do you want to say anything? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I don't know, Josh and Reyna, you're kind of like battling it out for who should go first, but you want to talk a little bit about building your crew and building your cast and how you did that. I mean, your story is all about like the polar bears in the North Pole or North Oakland. So I'm super curious about how you handled that.
All right. I think Reyna was having some tech issues, so I don't know if she's back on. But Reyna, you there? All right.
Yeah, I'm back on.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I'm back on.
All right. So they're asking about casting and crew. So I'll start on this one and pass it to you. So okay. The easiest decision we ever had was to cast Reyna. Boom. That's it. I'll pass it to you. No. So basically we were lucky. The 3 co-creators of the show from the beginning, and our team evolved and grew to include the genius that is here with me today. But the 3 people were myself, Ivani Turiaga, the director, and Darren Colston, the co-producer and co-writer for season 1. And Yvonne and Darren come out of the film world in the Bay much more than myself. So I come more out of the performance and writing world, and they come out more out of the film world. They're both, have done residencies at SF Film. They've both done crew as directors, producers. And so in terms of crew, they were able to crew up our squad. And again, similar to what has been talked about, is like folks who are down, folks like our crew is 80%, maybe 90% people of color, folks from the Bay, very young. Darren Colston, who was in charge of kind of assembling the crew, would always say that this set is a learning set. So if you were never trained as a gaffer, but that's what you want to grow into, this is a place to learn. This is a place to ask questions. And so it felt like a very safe space, to use that word, but also there was a standard of excellence where everyone's here to learn and we're here to get the job done. So both can be true at the same time. We don't have to sacrifice one for the other. So that was on the crew side. I had very little to do with that. On the casting side, we did auditions, and like was said, some people came through recommendations of friends. So our lead actor that is with me for season 1, Nina, Reyna came to us through Shanaka Hodge, and Shanaka, great writer who many of y'all might know in Oakland, and she was helping out on the script, and I was like, yo, Knock, who's gonna play Nina? And she was like, Reyna Amaya, you need to. And so we did auditions, and same thing with Dante Clark. So some people came through friends, and then some SF casting. So the guy who plays Benny, who becomes kind of the lead in season 2, we never met him before, and he turned out to be a brilliant, humble actor. And then the thing that we did that we tried to do is sprinkle some fun little Bay Area cameos. So from folks like Kamau, W. Kamau Bell, to Boots Riley, to Mr. Fab, to, rappers, comedians, because you have a lot of, I forget who said it, Baymus, I think you said Gamus, which that's a good one. I like that one. Boy, I got a lot of Baymus people who want to do stuff, but there's not that many productions. So when we asked them, they were like, hell yeah, I got to show up for an hour and do 2 lines. I got you. So that's kind of how we did it. And then Reyna, what else do you think about casting? I mean, basically everyone on our team was a producer by the end, is how it rolls.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one of the things that we got to do, which is super fun, is tap into our community and do some cameos in ways that you wouldn't necessarily be expecting. So you mentioned some of them, Josh, but also, we had Erica Huggins, original Black Panther, who played my grandmother in episode 1. And the funny thing about moments like that is, I'm casted as an actor on this show. And in season 1, I was only doing acting. I wasn't on the writing team at that time. And so, Josh and the director, and they're getting you together, and okay, so we're gonna have you meet, and they're trying to explain to me that I'm getting ready to meet with Erica Huggins. Erica turns the corner, I turn the corner, I'm like, girl, how you doing? Oh my God. Like, we know each other. That's my auntie already, like my dad taught in the Panther School and has known Erica since forever. So we had some of those moments that were really special because it's like, you can have Erica Huggins in your series, but how are you going to place her? What do you want? What's important that you want her to say? And so I think that's another sort of piece to making this art. And I was going to ask you, Josh, to speak a little bit about Perkins, who was in it too, that you can have fun with these characters that you with these cameos. So just really quickly, if you will, Josh, about that.
Oh man, you putting me on the spot. All right, so in season 1, we had a very funny scene of a group of old men, old Black men, just talking shit, hanging out, and we flipped it in ways I won't describe. But when we asked our team who could we cast as that, our team, and specifically my friend from Movement Generation, Quentin Sankofa, he was like, you should talk to Arnold Perkins. Now, Arnold Perkins is a respected, he's like the head of the Brotherhood of Elders. He was the first Black head of the Alameda County Department of Health. Like, he is a respected, like, well-known dude. And I said, Quentin, you want us to cast him as the, like, just, shit-talking uncle? And he was like, just ask him. And so we asked Arnold, and I tried to do, and I was as humble, and I said, take a look at the script. If this doesn't work for you, we're just, and he looked at it and he was like, oh, this looks like fun, because we always have to be so serious all the time. Let's do it. And so what ended up happening is we had these 3 guys who are all super, powerful activists. And as they're drinking, it's a liquor scene. Let's just say that the bottle, as we started shooting, got a little lighter as we kept shooting, and Arnold Perkins turned into one of the best comedic actors we ever seen. So that's the type of casting that we didn't have no casting agency. We ask our community, and people will surprise you. And that's the Bay Area. People will surprise you. And that's kind of what I heard Gene saying too, is you got to let people step outside of the roles and like find those voices. If we tried to cast that from an actor, like a theater actor, it wouldn't have been the same thing. So thanks for putting me on the spot, Reyna.
Josh, all I heard was get your cast intoxicated to get the best performances.
I mean, when in doubt.
That's all I heard, man. That's all I heard.
When in doubt. Actually, that's one of my favorite scenes oh my God, that and Erica Higgins, of course. Like, just seeing, I mean, I've worked for the Alameda County Public Health. I admire Mr. Perkins so much, and to see him in that scene, chopping it up, it was beautiful. It made me, I have to say, it was one of those like, oh my God, can I put it on pause because I got to go to the bathroom? It was because I'm an old lady, It was hella funny. It was so great. And then also like seeing Erica, Miss Higgins, like as a Uber driver. I mean, that to me, that's like, you guys are like, this is a deep authenticity, and that to me is just, that's the real deal, right? Like we are doing work in the Bay Area is just incredibly beautiful, because I think you get to bring people to it. I think Dyke Central is that too. We get to be the farmer's market, and we're gonna, we get to see, people really dealing with their relationships and having multiple, in the queer community, having pretty open, polyamorous relationships that get a little complicated. It's beautiful. So I want to shift a little bit, because like, there's a lot of chat going on in the chat, and this is connected to it, is like, all three of these projects have some deep authenticity. That's obvious. There's some serious heart and soul happening here. But this stuff costs money. And I think Josh talked a little bit about it in terms of distribution and getting it out. Like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about fundraising and funding and distribution. I love hearing, I don't remember if it was Morgan, you were talking about going and meeting with Netflix, and like, what you're doing these incredibly independent projects, but your time is money. And there are some things that you cannot get as favors. I mean, I understand it. I get it. I'm independent maker here in the Bay Area. Get a lot of favors, but yeah. So I don't know who wants to go first on this one. I wasn't quite in order thinking about it. I mean, I don't know, Florencia, if you want to start us off and tell us a little bit about how you raised the money besides the $5,000, because I know it didn't cost you $5,000 to make this whole series. Like, that's cool. And you don't have to tell us, you guys don't have to tell us your dollars. You don't have to tell us your actual dollars, but you can tell us a little bit about like, what was that process? What was the strategy? Did you do it as directors? Did you put it to your producers? That, kind of that general conversation about that. And what kind of difficult decisions did you make around that? That's a lot. It's a lot. I know. And we're at 6:30, or 6:40. So.
Okay, I'll make it brief. Fundraising is a nightmare, and that's why there's only one season of Dyke Central. I am the producer as well as the director, and I kept having this fantasy that I would find somebody else that was going to do it, and it was just a matter of time of like finding the producer that would do it. And then at some point along the way, I was like, oh, it's just me. Okay. Like, I mean, I had a team, but ultimately I just had to do the fundraising. Crowdfunding was just starting to be a thing when I was like trying to get the season going. We did some crowdfunding. It wasn't an established thing like it is now. So it was like definitely blindly doing it. It wasn't superbly successful. So basically it was fundraising like little by little. So, the event at the Grand Lake Theater gave us like a few $1,000s, a small few $1,000s. And with that, I was able, the bottom line of it is I got more and more efficient at shooting. So I ended up shooting like 3 episodes at a time for the cost of like 1.5, and then 5 episodes at a time for the cost of 3. And just very much maximizing it, always with a skeleton paid crew. I mean, you can't ask people to work for free for an episodic. You know, you could do it for a short film, but not episode after episode. And especially, it's a huge investment of time and labor. We did get tons of favors along the way, but ultimately, yeah, that I feel like that is the number one hardest part, at least for me, because of where I come from. I've never had a desire to, like, I'm not in sales. I don't make a lot of money. It's like, that's not really my area. I'm much more on the writing, and I'm really good at scheduling a shoot. Like, I'm really good at being efficient with money, but the raising of it is very, very hard. I want to say that in my most recent project, I did have support of people who are much better at fundraising, like Dawn. And I think that's definitely the way to go, is to like, I would say is to think about it ahead of time and to have strategies for each step of the way, which I did not have at the time. But whenever we talk about distribution, I will say I had more luck making a little bit of the money back in distribution, just a little bit.
I'll jump in. So I know for Bid, the way we approached this was absolutely not a. I mean, we considered a whole bunch of different options, right? We started with the crowdfunding route. We nixed that just because we realized, at least for us, that was a labor of love that we just couldn't dedicate the time to. And so then the question became, like, so what did we have? So like, I think for those that like want to find ways to be efficient and really great at fundraising, I would just ask yourself, like, what makes you special? Like, what can you uniquely do? So for us, it was our network. I mean, coming out of tech, we had a really strong network of folks that looked like us, that would be energized by the story. And so, I mean, we had 23 investors. We raised for, feels like, I don't know, 6 to 9 months. You know, I was asked if I wanted to do the show in like pieces, and it was absolutely the hell not. Like, I'm not like, for me, it was like, I need all my money right now so that I can shoot it, so I can get done what I need to get done. And like, I'm happy with that approach. I would also say, like, as a creator, putting your own money in, whether like it's taken off of work because that costs you money, because like you said, it's time, or being willing to, like, you know, maybe not take that vacation, because, like, you know, those are the trade-offs that you have to make. So I would also say, like, it's trade-offs. It's always been a game of trade-offs, and I would say just get creative. So like, because we didn't do a crowdfunding, it was like, okay, so who's in our network? Morgan contributed money. Morgan went into his network. But the first email that I sent out, the subject line was "Help me win an Emmy." And like, that was my goal. I still have that goal. I expect to win an Oscar. I expect to win an Emmy. I expect Morgan to win multiple Emmys and multiple Oscars. And it was like, yo, if you want to get on this train, hop on. I'm overly confident probably, but like, I expect it to happen. So it is what it is. And like, that's what I communicated out. And like the people that received that energy through the email ended up turning into conversations. Lots of learning from some of these conversations, crashing, burning. You know, you kiss a lot of frogs, you get a lot of no's, but then you start to build up momentum. And like, there are definitely some things that I feel like we could go back and do to raise more money. It's probably will continue to be a strength of ours, like in small sprints and projects. But yeah, that was, you know, it was us leaning into who we were, our network, getting creative, and then just being mindful that, like, you know, this is gonna happen one way or another. So like, it had to happen. Like, I have no other way other than saying, like, thinking through, like, us just continuing to execute.
Yeah, I'll follow up with that. And y'all can probably imagine, like, you know, our team at Chocolate Chip Media, me and Gene, we've had some pretty intense conversations along this journey because it's not easy. But I will say, just from like I don't know if encouraging is the right word, but I would say like keeping a glass half full mindset around getting your project made, because that's the most important thing. Like there's so many creators who have talent, who have dope stories, but their projects don't get made. And then second phase, their projects don't get seen. So I think keeping those two things in mind from like a glass half full perspective in this statement of we're all connected to money. As cliche as that might sound, like we're all actually connected to money, but it's a matter of what trade-offs are you willing to make to get access to that money. So that means the trade-off of time, like, okay, I need money, but this may push back my project. That means the trade-off of more development work. So yeah, you have a script, but do you have a treatment? Do you have a Bible? Do you have all these things that sometimes you get one shot to ask for money for certain people? And if you don't come, or I'll speak for us, if we didn't come to the table with like our ducks in a row and looking professional, whatever that means, especially as shitty as it sounds, especially for Black people, like, you know, sometimes we only get one shot to knock on doors. That shouldn't be a surprise to people. That's just the world we live in. And so we feel like we had to come extra correct to ask for things, right? And that's why Gene probably was, you know, overzealous and overconfident about like what we wanted, and, you know, because it's like we have this big dream. We're not coming, you know, to people with, you know, just an idea, right? So I think that's really what it boils down to, just like what trade-offs are you willing to make to get access to make your films, because like your film needs to be made no matter what somebody tells you. It's like if you have a story idea and if you're creative and you just, you know, feel like you need to get it out, like just get it out.
I love that. That's that to me is that entrepreneurial perspective of the world, and I feel like people making independent media and really going out there, that's what you got to do. Like you're gonna get a lot of no's. You have to build a tough skin around this stuff because, you know, and absolutely as creators of color, as queer people, you know, people creating things that are not mainstream, like you have to deal with that. It is the reality, and we want change, but we're not going to get change unless we're in the room, and the way to get in the room is to just do it. So I respect that, and I think all of your projects are kind of like that. I know Josh and Reyna, you can talk a little bit about, I know second season you got some big hitters on there in terms of helping you get some of that distribution going, but I'd love to hear about like how did you raise the money for the first season, and you know, what was that? And I love this conversation about networks because we cannot do this work in isolation. You know, we have to do it in collaboration. We have to work together, and that's part of the beauty of doing media work. It's why I continue to do it. I'm very slow, but you know, I still do it. I'm still in there. So, but yeah, Josh and Reyna, if you want to talk a little bit about, you know, how did you do your first season in terms of financing, and then tell us a little bit about your big hitters that you got for your second season.
Reyna, I'll start with one and pass it to you for two. I think is the move. I think what Gene was saying about leaning into, like, for Bit, that y'all strength was your networks in the tech world, and that was the place to go for social but also financing. Where we came from, the North Pole, it's a really unique thing, is based, you know, kind of initiated out of a social justice, environmental justice nonprofit that already has like foundations that support their ongoing work. We were able to find, and I'll be very honest, I think it's good to be transparent about this stuff, because usually we talk around it. And so I want to and I'll put it in the chat, but we got funding we did a Kickstarter for both seasons. So we did the crowdfunding, and I think it was Gene who said that y'all didn't want to do that because it's so much work. It's a lot of work, but what that gets you on the flip side is what they say is true. It gets you more than funders. It gets you people invested in the project. And so there is a reward to it that we did find in many ways, that those were some of our most committed people. But beyond the Kickstarter, we raised money from film foundations, and some of which we were the first web series they ever founded. So the Berkeley Film Foundation, which does documentaries mostly, and short films, they took a chance on us for season 1. They labeled us, I think we were called a short film because they didn't know how to label us. And we were like, I guess we're making 7 short films. But they took a chance, and then they funded us again for season 2. Places like the Creative Work Fund, which funds collaborations between artists and nonprofits. Places like the East Bay Fund for Artists. Places like the Akinati Foundation. Now, Akinati, they only fund events, they don't fund film, and they say that specifically. So we asked them, what if we do a series of screenings and use those screenings to pair with performances? And they said that will support. And so that was a way to support the distribution side and the community engagement side. And so we got creative, and a lot of these foundations, I didn't start as a fundraiser. Like, I didn't want to be a fundraiser. I didn't start as a fundraiser. And then when I realized like that was going to be a big part of my fucking job, I went to my mentors. So I went to, Matteo Nube at Movement Generation. I went to Joan Osato at You Speaks. I said, this is what we're trying to do. Who should we talk to? And they gave me a list, and they're like, this is who you talk to. And so I think that was part of it. We did the kind of foundation hustle. We never had investors, so it's a slightly different take. And then, Reyna can talk about our executive producers. They never threw down money. What we asked them to do was help with distribution and networking. Maybe we should have asked them for some money, but we never did.
We should have. They were able to provide all kinds of support. One of our executive producers offered us her home. You were talking before about people offering their home to you. So we were able to get, that kind of support. And then I think, for some of you guys who are familiar with the Bay, I mean, people from the Bay love anything Bay. Especially if they can get behind also what kind of message it's with, and so I think we had a lot of folks who wanted to be a part of this Bay project. You have Fab, you had people, Kamal Bell, who were just like, yes, I will totally be a part of this, in what capacity I can. And sometimes the help from those folks ends up being, can you tweet this out? Because of your following base, would you be interested in being, that we're gonna, put together for promo? There's all kinds of ways to sort of utilize this support and get, whether it's financial funding or getting following, which, as we know, is of kind of things funded. It is about how many followers do you have, how many people do you have interested in this project in order for Hollywood and some of these other platforms to take you seriously.
I know we could talk about fundraising forever and the whole idea around all of that. It's almost 7, so we wanted to open it up to questions and to let the, people watching and participating to post some of your questions to our panelists. And you can say people's names if you want to, or you can just do a general one that we can ask. I have to say personally, because I've done mostly documentary work and I'm starting a series. I just pitched a series to 30 people on a Zoom. It was really painful. It was, NBC and stuff. Yeah, it was really, man, it kicked my butt, let me just tell you. But it was great. I had a great time. It was fun. My attitude is like, it if not now, when? You got to just do it. You got an idea, you have enough together, a story that you got to just do it. So I am curious, I do have to think about like this concept of investors and like, what is it, Morgan and Jean, like, what is it that you are telling your investors they're going to get back from you for what it is that they're investing in? And I think this is one of those things like in the Bay Area and in this really, really independent and often very much like either crowd fundraising or foundation-based fundraising that we're not, many media makers here in the Bay Area are not so connected with looking at investors in our project. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you, and then we'll be collecting questions from the group as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. It's a simple answer, but it's got a couple layers to it. I'll try to give all three. So I mean, there's one side of it, which is this concept of investing in our business. So as a production media company, like, do you want to invest in our business? Like, that's quite frankly the next stage, but we gave some optionality to folks to say, hey, we want to like invest in this story or this business. And had a lot of no's on the business because they were trying to figure out like if we could make a product. That product is bid. So now folks are asking us if they can invest in the business. So like, it was a great seeding for us to like now start rethinking about fundraising. I think the second piece is that like, quite frankly, as creators, you got to be careful of how you take money, to be very honest with you. So like, not all money is good money. And so we insulated ourselves because we raised money in our network. So like, I'm very comfortable looking in front of my investors and saying that if we sold the show, they get nothing because all the work goes back to the crew and the cast and the people that wrote the story. But that was like designed intentionally. So, I mean, you can either say, I'm gonna give up a piece of it and we can start talking about points and all that, but I'm not sure if that like makes a lot of sense, but like there's that route of it. Or you could go and keep it even simpler and just say, look, we're going to kind of run a Kickstarter without running a Kickstarter. So like in a Kickstarter, like people get things, they can get t-shirts, they can get all these different things, they can become producers. And so we went down that route as well. So like, that was like, hey, here's a purchase agreement. We're going to set up and build a purchase agreement for you to have contributed, invest, and bid. And for the exchange of your funds, we are going to get this in exchange for that. So it was very clear at a very like, kind of like exchange of like money for a goods and service, like for a specific item. And the reason why we did that is because as a business, because we ran our production and everything through Chocolate Chip Media, we wanted there to be something that we would be able to deliver so that when we wrote our taxes and did all the things, it like trued up and it made sense. So I think there's a lot of flexibility with it. Having raised money for other startups and been in this startup space, that's how we thought about it. And like, it's all about like who you're raising for or who you're raising from. And then kind of like, again, back to Morgan's point, like the trade-offs and the things that you're willing to make. And some of the trade-offs that we weren't willing to make was like creative, like control. Like that's not what we were attempting to do. The intent was to like get to a place where we could have as much flexibility to scale our show as possible, which is exactly where we are right now. So it worked. There are definitely some trade-offs with that, but that's how we thought about raising. Morgan, you want to add something?
Yeah, what I'll add is I also want from like me and Jean's perspective to be clear that every project is different and every project is going to have a different goal, right? For Bit, we were over intentional from the very beginning that we wanted to create something that was made, quote unquote, made for TV, in the sense that we are extremely independent. Nobody except y'all on this call know who we are. And it was like, if we want to get in front of people, at the very least, we need to let our story speak for itself. And so when it comes to how we pitch to investors, we pitched it in a very much like, hey, our goal is to make something that's ready-made for a streaming platform that you regularly watch, right? So I think that's one thing. And I also think that even through Jean's answer, like sometimes investor can be interchangeable. It doesn't always mean that you're going to get a monetary return on your money. It could be a number of things, but I think for filmmakers, especially for your first project, a big play for some investors is that you come to the table with more than one project, right? Because people might be thinking, are you like a one-trick pony? And we actually learned that throughout our process of pitching over the past, call it year, in that in some of these meetings that we're having, people actually want to know more than just bid. They want to know, what other things do you all have in the pipeline? I know somebody asked in the chat, just not to go on too much of a tangent, but how we've been able to pitch to some of these people. So out officially starting like last week, we got an agent to represent us for bids specifically. But for the last year, Gene and I have literally been pitching on our own. And the way we've done that, like, I know Gene mentioned Netflix. I will tell you, the way we got into be able to pitch to Netflix is nothing spectacular. We're not special at all. Gene went to a diversity and inclusion networking event at Netflix in the South Bay. What was that, 8 months ago, Gene, or something like that? When he was at that event, it was mainly for Netflix's Black employees and other people interested in Netflix and their content. One of their higher ups happened to be there. Gene met a Black employee. That Black employee introduced that person to Gene, and Gene pitched on the spot. Next thing we know, we're at Netflix. That's not special. That's not like anything. We have some cool connections. Gene just showed up to an event, pitched on the spot, and bam, right? And we're still having conversations with a lot of people, but I'm saying all that to say there's no one answer to like how to pitch to people, especially when you don't have representation. We feel like we're in that bucket still to an extent. So yeah, it's just like hustling and, trying to just knock down doors.
I love that. How you described that just now is like sort of the, networking 101, get yourself into these places. And right now, I know under COVID, it's a little challenging in one way. In other ways, there's a lot of opportunities right now to meet people that you wouldn't necessarily get a chance to meet. Because there are a lot of forums and these kinds of events that are happening. So absolutely. I mean, I think, and I just really appreciated that whole conversation around what does that mean to invest in you as a production company and in this project, but also as you develop more things, and then getting yourself into these spaces and meeting people. That's fantastic. We do have a few questions here, and I'm going to kind of go through that. And I do have to just one last thing on that. Like, I'm a member of every single club I can get myself to be a member of. I'm part of the National Association of Latino Independent Producers. I'm part of, Brown Girls Doc Mafia as a documentary maker. These groups are really important, and there are a lot of groups that invite you in. Going to mixers, going to these kind of conversations. So I really want to emphasize what you just said in terms of that, taking those opportunities, jumping in, and being kind of fearless. You got to be fearless. You got ideas. You want to be able to represent yourself and be as professional as you possibly can and have those ideas. One of the questions that we got is, are there some kind of like books or learning? This is kind of connected to me in some ways to this networking question, is like, are there some books or learning recommendations? And then this one was specifically into turning films into series or otherwise producing series. And, BAVC, we're trying to start developing a few programs around developing series. We just culminated one that was for young people, 18 to 24, young people of color, queer people who were writing series for the first time. But do you any of you have recommendations for that or places to go? And I know, Florencia, I know you went to film school. I wonder if there are things that, that came out of film school that you recommend to people to read or think about. And we'd love to post some of those things too.
Not necessarily from film school, but I was reading these questions about writing, and I want to say a couple things. One is never rush production. Like, make sure that your scripts are like completely ready to go into production, because I saw something I saw some there like, oh, how do I fix plot holes? I mean, just take your time and do not even start thinking about production until like you are really like in your every single revision, you're making tiny changes. And then that, I think that's when, you know, and then people were talking about like writing groups and how do you get into episodic writing? For me, I'm someone who doesn't struggle with ideas. I always have like ideas for projects. And once you sit with the idea, I think you'll know if it's a feature, if it's a short, or if it's something that can be an episodic. I think something that is like centered around like a small concept or like something that has a beginning and an end is not going to be an episodic. Whereas something that you want to explore, like a community and several characters and something that could lead to that, I definitely would encourage like not trying to push or force the format and to just listen to the nature of your idea. And before you get into a writing group, make sure that you have developed your craft as a writer. I personally find collaborative writing very challenging unless people are coming from the same, like have a developed sense of themselves as writers and have experience, because it's very hard to be developing that when you're trying to collaborate with other people at different levels. So I really encourage folks to develop their own writing habits, their own writing, like their own voice, and just practices and troubleshooting and whatnot before forming like a group where you're trying to create something together. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, yeah, please go for it.
Yeah,
I want to hear everybody.
Sorry, yeah, I kind of nerd out about this stuff, so forgive me. I was just switching the screen. So by no means are these books like the gospel. I just use some of them in our process for bit. So TV showrunners roadmap, that's a book. TV drama series, that's a book. Pitch anything, that's another one. The Anatomy of Story, and then last one, this book by Robert McKee. So I'm sure y'all like, man, this dude is extra as hell. I'm sorry, they was just right next to me, and
I love it. We love it.
Just wanted to share.
No, we love it. Those are all great resources, and I think we'll try and figure out how to write those all down so we can put them
I'll type them in the chat.
too.
I'll type them in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be great. We'd love that. I appreciate it. Yeah, because all of us, obviously, you know, we're all different learners. We learn in different ways, and we have different processes for how we do these things. And so it's great, you know, it's great to get those opportunities to kind of think about, like, how do I work? What are the things that I want? And I really appreciate that. There's a couple of questions in here to keep going on this writing thing. Like, you know, Florencia talked a little bit about like being in the writer's room and wanting to have a writer's room that with people who are experienced. But I'd love to hear from, you know, other people. Certainly, it sounds like Reyna, you jumped on to being in the writer's room for the season 2, you know, of the North Pole. Like, tell us a little bit about that. What is a writer's room? I think some people don't even, you know, we don't know the people who are on this. We have a lot of people joining us here who some have experience and some have no experience. So we'd love to hear, you know, tell us about that. What does it mean? And how was that for you as an actor as well?
Yeah, so I have a background in stand-up comedy. And so writing, I think for me, used to be a very personal experience. It was more about me, my thoughts, and then expressing those to audience. I think that I would say, and for some people, writing is a personal experience. So I think it's important to understand that this kind of writing that we're talking about, if you can, because I think it's very helpful, for it truly to be collaborative. So meaning that you have a writer's room, you have a group of writers, you have your personal life experiences, and you are inviting other writers to share their personal experiences in relationship to a script, an idea, a scene, a line. I mean, writers' rooms are a lot about what does everybody think about this? And this becomes so many different things. This can be as broad as, what do you think this main character's job should be? You know, to, you know, what kind of book should be on the table, you know, when they're making this big life choice, you know, what do we want to see in the, you know, in the background? And so I think that when putting together a writer's room, you need to have people that you are okay with spending a lot of time with. And also people that you are okay with getting intellectually intimate with. There are things that come up for you personally when you're in a writer's room. Triggers can come up. You know, different life experiences that you have not experienced, that can be traumatizing, that other people are sharing, can come up. And I don't want to make it just scary. All this beautiful stuff can come up. I mean, perspectives and, you know, shifts and turns that you're like, oh my God, I don't have that life experience, so I didn't even think to go in that direction. That's brilliant. So it is a lot about sharing and intimacy and pulling things apart and like diving in on something that can be something that means nothing to you. Like, I don't care what color his shirt is, but for some reason, this ends up being super important to the rest of the story, you know? So just being flexible and being open and being malleable. And knowing that you are probably gonna rewrite, throw away, chuck, add so much to the script along that journey.
I just want to shout out the books. This is what I'm reading. They call this the Bible in Hollywood for execs. It's Creativity Inc. It's from the head of Pixar. It's the most corporate ass book I've ever read, but it's really fucking good. And I think it gets into a lot of how you do what Reyna said, which is how do you have a space that's safe enough to throw out your ideas, but you're allowed to take risks and you're allowed to challenge each other and challenge yourselves. And then the other book I want to shout out, y'all remember that fake children's book? These are the two books on my night shelf right now. The fake children's book, Go the Fuck to Sleep. So this is the sequel, or the third one, from our friend Adam Mansbach, called Fuck Now There Are Two of You. And I say that because I've got two kids. And I think about what Jean was saying about you want to make stories for your kids. And in the writer's room, it's like you talk about, we have who are our audience and who do we want to make stories for? Who do we want to make stories with? How do we have fun? This shit is hard. How can we have fun while we're doing it? Because I got fireworks going off near me because we're in Oakland right now. And I just think it's really like the writer's room. Reyna and we're in a writer's room right now. We're starting on a new show that I'm not going to talk about, but we're trying to write a TV episodic 30-minute joint. And we've spent so many hours. We're not even at the plot yet. We're not even at the pilot action. We spent the first like 4 weeks just talking about character and really just talking about the main character, who this character is. And we are debating, we're going in, and that's the only way to do it. And so as someone who doesn't come from screenwriting, I'm a writer, but I came into screenwriting later. So I didn't go to film school. Most of us didn't go to film school. Some of us are comedians. I think it's you have to know your craft, so you have to learn it. But you also, it's like that thing, you got to learn the rules so you can break the rules. And that's the shit that I think a lot of people making web series are doing that's exciting, which is where you got to take it and flip it. And so that's what I'm interested in. That's why I like the way the other two series are talking about their work as well.
I would add 2 more books. I was hesitant to add mine. So Josh, thanks for giving me the courage, man, because one of mine is corporate as fuck. I just finished, I actually pulled it up because my memory is really bad at this point. The Ride of a Lifetime, Bob Iger's book. That shit was fire. And it was fire because, like, for me, I want to be the Black Walt Disney. I want to build something that big and, like, to be inspired by, like, what this man did and all the things that encompass Disney. But, like, thinking through the deal with Pixar, which is, like, what that looked like and how they had to go back and forth. There's a lot of things I picked up. I would encourage you reading that. And then the other book is actually a children's book. Like, so it's funny, Josh, if we get that in common. It's called What You Do With an Idea. It's by Kobe Yamada. And the reason why this book is super special to me is because I also have a lot of ideas. And it's difficult to wrestle with an idea because generally you got to figure out, like, what you're going to do with it. Like, are you going to take care of it? Are you going to, like, actually go after it? And I feel like creators a lot of times aren't necessarily given the space to do that because we either ignore it or don't feel safe in doing it. Or sometimes, like, we don't give it the time it needs. Whatever it is, like, this book is always inspiring to me. I bought it for my son, and I actually gave it to some mentees, but I would definitely encourage to check it out.
Well, thank you. Thanks everybody. I really appreciate it. I think it's really important, for us to understand, our different ways of learning, and some of that's through reading, some of it's through watching, websites or, videos and things like that. And some of it's in community. I think we need to start wrapping up, but Florencia mentioned something in the chat a little bit about trust and, this is, and I think, Reyna and, I think almost all of you talked a little bit about this. This is an intimate process that you're then going to show publicly. So I would love to, maybe this is sort of last thoughts as we wrap this up, because I could talk to all of you like for days. Like, I love this. This is freaking amazing. You're all so inspiring to me, and you've inspired me to be, to keep going on my creative process. So thank you for that. But I don't know, Florencia, if you'd like to sort of, start us wrapping up with sharing a little bit about what you said in the chat, because I thought that was it was poignant, and it's connected to this. We need all of it.
I think what I said is to always have a circle of trusted people that you are running your drafts by. And I do this also with every cut, like the rough cut and whatnot. And I think for me, just like putting out the best quality content that I can out there is really important. Even if 3 years from now, I'm gonna look back and be like, oh my God. And the way to do that, and the way to, like, catch your blind spots and to see things from a different perspective, is to get other people's, especially for me, because I create mostly by myself, to just get people's feedback. Once you've, like, done the best you can do, get people's eyes on it, and then really be open to receiving the feedback. And sometimes you're going to disagree, but sometimes, like, I think there's a very, like, it's just a really important part of the process of filmmaking, and just to really be able to receive and see what resonates of that feedback and incorporate it. And sometimes it'll affirm, like, your opinion about something, somebody will say, like, oh, I really don't like that. And you're like, actually, I really do like it. I'm going to keep that. But having that process is really important to me.
Oh.
Josh, I just kicked it to you because you have to go.
Yeah, last thoughts. This is wrapping us up. Last thoughts from everybody.
With the kids in a minute. It's almost bedtime, and the wife's like, Zoom time is over. Now it's kids time. The intimate, I just think, storytelling is a courageous act. It's what we all are meant to do. I feel like I'm really interested in democratizing and demystifying this process. which is that we are all storytellers. We all have stories to tell, and there is a craft, there is a skill, there is a thing, and so we can all learn. I will never be a gaffer, but I do know more about lighting than I knew 3 years ago. I don't know nothing about a RE Red or what my DP does, but I know a little bit more than I did 3 years ago. And so I think, like, start with the story, start with your passion, build your team, and don't be, you know, it's like there's a lot of steps, and just take it a step at a time. And so start with the story and start with the team. And then, you know, I'll just say for me, you know, you can get our info on the North Pole Show, or maybe I'll put in the chat. I'm always happy to connect. I'm always happy to share what we've learned. But I always ask, you got to tell me something that you're learning too, because that's how this goes. And so I think this is a collective process, and I think BAVC is doing great shit to build this together.
Thank you. Yeah. Any last thoughts or about the intimacy of doing this work? Either one or both.
Yeah, just feel free to hit me up. Instagram, I am Batman4. Gene at chocolatechipmedia.com. Happy to connect. Always happy to network. Let's shoot a movie together. Let's win an Oscar. That's it.
What was the question, Don? I'm so sorry.
It was really just a wrap up question. So, you know, we kind of started with like the intimacy of working in a team, and then sharing your work with each other before you take it public, but also just tell us your last thoughts, you know.
Yeah, no.
You want to share?
Thanks for creating this space. It's great to connect with all the other filmmakers here. I mean, the reason I'm so passionate about like sharing, even though I'm like still very new, is because I didn't always either have access to certain spaces of knowledge, or I didn't know to tap into them. So as much as possible, like continue tapping in to, you know, any networks. Feel free to reach out to us, and yeah, like just get your stories made. It's easier said than done, but like just do your damnedest to get it made, because somebody needs to see it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody pretty much said it. I don't have that much else to add. Just, you know, picking your team. It's super important, you know? It's like sports. You want to be like, you know, the recent Lakers, or do you want to be like the Lakers from back in the day? Do you want to be the recent Warriors, or do you want to be the Warriors from back in the day? Pick your team. Yeah, so definitely picking your team is very important. Yeah, and picking your voice and using it responsibly.
Thank you. So thank you all so much. I've learned so much, and I really appreciate all of you and your unique voices, your unique way of bringing these really important stories out to the world. So I hope people who've been watching this have had, you know, I've learned a ton. I've been taking notes for myself as much as for sharing. We really are grateful to you and appreciate you. BAVC is doing a 3-part series on producing episodic programming. It's in the chat. That'll start July 1st. We are really starting to do, you know, BAVC has been traditionally a radical place for voices that have been underrepresented, voices of people of color, queer people, people with radical ideas of social change, and we continue on that. And we've also been really kind of non-fiction space, and we're really working to move into this fiction space, and having the Bay Area, you know, it's not always New York and LA, and the Bay Area is a thriving, incredible, brilliant community of people who are doing some deep healing work for our world, creating a new world. Please check out Florencia's article that she wrote in Medium about like looking at creating the new world that we want to create. And the Bay Area has really been a central place for that. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. We're gonna keep watching and keep looking. And for those of you watching and being on here, thank you all for being here, and please keep writing and keep, join us at BAVC. We love you. We want you. We need you. We need these stories to be told, and we got space and time and technology and tools and support for that. So I'm really grateful to all of you. Thanks a lot. And I don't know, Isa or Paula, if you have any last words that you want to say. Thank you so much. I know we recorded this. We've got the chat.
Yeah, we're gonna definitely follow up with you. Can we all just do snaps and like claps for Dawn? That was like
thanks.
amazing moderation to no surprise. Thank you, Reyna. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Florencia. Thank you, everybody who's so engaged. I was geeking out seeing people take notes. That's like my love language, is like being that engaged and that kind of learner. Let's try and figure out ways to stay in touch. You can find us on social, BAVC Media Lab, BAVC at Twitter, Bay Area Video Coalition on LinkedIn and Facebook. Let's stay connected and let's create those, pods, as we say right now in post-COVID world, to stay inspired and connected and keep that momentum. And in the chat, say your goodbyes. I want to wrap up so people can, eat dinner and move their legs and stretch. But thank you so much. I'm going to save the chat. We're going to record it, and we'll be sure to find you all in the email with all the links, because we have your email now from Eventbrite. So hopefully that's okay. Paula, did you have any last words?
No, thank you, Isa. Have a great night, everybody. Take
Have
care.
a great evening. Thanks for staying on so long with us.
Thank
Thank you.
Good
Bye,
night.
everybody.
You guys are all rock stars, damn it. I know, love it.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you. That's super fun.
Thanks again, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Morgan.
Thanks, Morgan.
I'm gonna go have dinner.
Yes, eat.
Yay.
Move your leg, move your body.
Thanks, Florencia. Yay. I know we're all like, this is our last goodbye. Oh, thanks, Jay. Yay.
Hey.
Love you, Jay.
Take care.
Man, take
Bye,
care.
Jay. Thanks for staying on the whole time.
Yeah.
No worries. It was great.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye, Dawn.
Bye. Okay, can I go and have dinner now?
Please do.
Okay, thanks.
I love you forever. I love you forever.
I love you forever.
That was amazing. Bye, Steven.
Bye. See you later.
Okay, I'm stopping the recording.
Okay.